The screen lit up with a notification from my banking app, causing my heart to drop into my stomach. I watched in real time as the funds from my thriving online business drained away, transfer after transfer, emptying the account I'd built over 3 painstaking years. Each transaction authorized with credentials that only 2 people possessed, me and my brother Marcus, whom I'd trusted to help manage operations during my maternity leave. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My hands trembled as I frantically tried to stop the transfers, but access was denied. My own security clearance had somehow been revoked. Through my shock, I noticed an email notification sliding onto my screen, a business registration confirmation from the state. For a company with the same name as mine, just slightly altered. Owner, Marcus Wilson. My younger brother had not only drained my accounts, but had registered a carbon copy of my business under his name. The side hustle I'd built from nothing while working a full-time corporate job, the handcrafted jewelry business that had grown from my kitchen table to a warehouse with 5 employees, was being stolen right before my eyes by someone who shared my blood. Someone I'd given a chance when no one else would. My name is Eliza Wilson. I'm 32, a new mother and the founder of Celestial Designs. This is the story of how I reclaimed my business and my dignity from the person who was supposed to have my back. The betrayal cut deeper, because Marcus had been my cheerleader from the beginning. When I started making jewelry as therapy during my divorce 3 years ago, he was the one who convinced me to open an Etsy shop. "Your work is too good to keep to yourself, Liz," he'd said, helping me photograph my first collection on our parents' patio. "People will pay good money for this." He was right. Within 6 months, I couldn't keep up with orders. I'd quit my soul-crushing marketing job to focus on Celestial Designs full-time, converting my garage into a studio and hiring 2 part-time assistants. The business had grown steadily, gaining features in fashion magazines and attracting a celebrity clientele. Last year's revenue had topped $800,000, a milestone I never imagined possible when I was wrapping packages at my kitchen counter. When I discovered I was pregnant, managing the growing business alone became challenging. The morning sickness hit me hard, and doctor-ordered bed rest in my 3rd trimester meant I needed help. Marcus had just been laid off from his 3rd job in 2 years. His resume was spotty at best, and he complained constantly about not being able to find work worthy of his talents. "Let me help you run things while you focus on the baby," he'd offered, his eyes lighting up as he walked through my newly leased warehouse space. "I've got the business degree you never finished. It's perfect timing for both of us." I'd hesitated, remembering how he'd borrowed money from our parents numerous times without repaying it, how he'd lived rent-free in their basement until age 29. But family is family, and everyone deserves second chances. Marcus was charming and smart. His problems had always seemed to stem from a lack of direction rather than malicious intent. Besides, I needed the help, and he needed the opportunity. A perfect solution for both of us. For 3 months, it worked beautifully. Marcus organized our inventory system, negotiated better rates with suppliers, and even landed us a coveted spot at a major trade show. I focused on creating new designs, when my health allowed, and preparing for my daughter's arrival. When Emma was born 7 weeks ago, I took a step back to bond with my newborn, checking in only occasionally, trusting that my brother had everything under control. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The first hint of trouble came when one of my artisans, Jade, called me at an unusual hour. "Hey, I know you're on leave, but I thought you should know Marcus moved all the production files to his personal cloud account. He said it was for security purposes, but he didn't share the new access credentials with anyone. We can't see the upcoming order specifications." I'd made a mental note to ask Marcus about it, but got distracted by Emma's feeding schedule and doctor appointments. Then came concerned texts from 2 long-term clients, asking why their orders were being shipped from a different company name. Again, I meant to follow up, but exhaustion claimed me each time I put Emma down for a nap. Looking back, the signs were all there, painting a picture of calculated deception. Marcus hadn't stumbled into betrayal. He'd orchestrated it meticulously over months, waiting for the perfect moment, when I was at my most vulnerable, to strike. As I sat in my living room, watching the bank account empty and the email confirmations roll in, my baby sleeping peacefully in her bassinet beside me, an icy clarity washed over me. The brother I'd grown up with, shared secrets with, defended from bullies, and given a second chance to, had been planning to steal everything I'd built from the moment I'd offered him the position. I called him immediately, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm raging inside me. "What have you done, Marcus?" His response was casual, almost bored. Taking what should have been mine from the start. "You've had your fun playing entrepreneur, Liz, but let's be honest. I'm the one with the business degree. I'm the one who streamlined operations and increased profit margins by 22% in just 3 months. You increased profits using my designs, my client relationships, and my business model." I countered, fighting to keep my voice low so as not to wake Emma. "Details," he dismissed. "The point is, I've been carrying this company while you've been playing mommy. Did you really think you could have it all? The successful business and the baby?" Something had to give. His words hit like physical blows. The familiar dismissal of my worth, my capabilities, my right to both motherhood and career success. It was the same condescension I'd faced during my divorce when my ex-husband insisted my jewelry making was just a cute hobby, and during countless pitch meetings where male investors talked over me. "This is theft, Marcus. Criminal theft. I'll go to the police." His laugh was cold. "With what proof? I've been running everything for months. I have relationships with all the suppliers and clients now. As far as anyone knows, I'm as much Celestial Designs as you are. Besides, do you really want to drag our family through a messy legal battle? Think about Mom and Dad. Think about your daughter." The mention of Emma made my resolve harden rather than crumble as he'd intended. What example would I be setting for my daughter if I allowed someone to steal what I'd worked so hard to build? What lesson would she learn about her worth, her rights, her place in the world? "You've made a serious mistake," I told him, ending the call before he could respond. I spent that night cataloging everything I still had access to. My original design sketches, time-stamped and backed up to my personal cloud. Emails with clients dating back to my first sales. Trademark registrations for the Celestial Designs name and logo. Financial records showing the business's growth under my leadership before Marcus's involvement. Most importantly, I had my specialized knowledge, the techniques I'd developed for combining metals and stones in ways that made my pieces unique, the relationships I'd cultivated with ethical gem suppliers across 3 continents, and the creative vision that had built the brand's reputation. By dawn, fueled by a combination of postpartum hormones, righteous anger, and strong coffee during Emma's feeding sessions, I had a plan. Marcus might have taken the money and the business infrastructure, but he couldn't replicate what made Celestial Designs special: me. My first call was to Jade, my lead artisan, who answered immediately despite the early hour. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out," she said, her voice heavy with relief. "We've all been trying to reach you, but Marcus told us you'd extended your leave and didn't want to be disturbed about trivial work matters while bonding with the baby. The manipulation was so calculated it momentarily took my breath away. He'd effectively isolated me from my own team. He's moved everything to a new location," Jade continued. "We're supposed to report there tomorrow. He's offering us all raises to stay quiet about the transition, saying you'd agreed to sell him the business but might get emotional about it. Quote, 'And what did you say?' I asked, heart pounding. I told him I'd think about it. But honestly, I was waiting to hear from you." We all were. None of us believed you'd just hand over your baby. I mean, your other baby, she corrected with a small laugh. Tears of gratitude stung my eyes. "I need your help, Jade. All of you." "Name it," she replied without hesitation. Over the next 3 hours, I spoke with each of my employees. All 5 expressed their loyalty and disgust at Marcus's actions. They agreed to play along temporarily, gathering information about his operations while I set my countermeasures in motion. My next call was to my accountant, Deepak, who was horrified by what had happened. "The transfers may have gone through, but this is clear fraud," he assured me. "I have all the documentation showing you as the sole proprietor. I can help you file reports with the bank and the authorities." "There's something else," I said, an idea forming. "How much detail do you have about the business finances from the last 3 months? Specifically, about the income reporting?" Deepak paused. That's interesting you should ask. I noticed some discrepancies when Marcus sent over the quarterly numbers. Sales were up significantly, but the reported taxable income didn't increase proportionally. I flagged it for follow-up, but he said you were restructuring some investments and would explain later. My suspicion crystallized into certainty. He wasn't just stealing my business, he was skimming from it too. Probably hiding income to avoid taxes. "If that's true," Deepak said slowly, "that creates a whole different level of problem for him. Tax fraud isn't something to mess around with." "No," I agreed, a plan taking shape. "It certainly isn't." While Emma napped, I made my most difficult call to my parents. They needed to hear what was happening from me, not from Marcus's inevitable spin. Mom answered, and I could hear the TV in the background, my father's laughter at some sitcom punchline. "Mom, I need to tell you something, and it's going to be hard to hear." Her voice immediately sharpened with concern. "Is it Emma? Are you both okay?" "Emma's fine," I assured her. "It's about Marcus. He's stolen my business." The silence that followed was brief but heavy. Then, "Oh, Eliza, not again, not again." 2 simple words that contained volumes. Not again, like when he'd taken money from Dad's wallet in high school. Not again, like when he'd used Mom's credit card for online gambling in college. Not again, like when he'd borrowed their retirement savings for a sure-thing investment that mysteriously evaporated. The pattern I'd chosen to ignore when I gave him access to my business was painfully clear to those who hadn't been blinded by optimism and familial loyalty. "We warned you." My father's voice came through, the phone apparently now on speaker. Not accusatory, just sad. His charm always comes with a price tag. "I know," I admitted. "But I need to know if you're with me on what comes next. Because I'm not letting him take what I built. And things might get messy." My mother sighed. "He's our son, Eliza." "And I'm your daughter," I replied, my voice cracking slightly. "The one who's never asked you for anything. The one who paid her own way through college and started a business from scratch. The one who just had your first grandchild. I need to know you have my back this time." The pause was excruciating, but when my father spoke again, his voice was firm. "What do you need from us?" Relief flooded through me. The truth. Just the truth when the time comes. With my support system activated, I turned to the offensive strategy. I contacted a lawyer specializing in business fraud, Amara Okafor, who agreed to see me immediately, accommodating both my urgent timeline and my need to bring Emma along. In her office, surrounded by law books and with my daughter sleeping against my chest in her carrier, I laid out everything I knew and suspected. Amara listened intently, occasionally making notes or asking clarifying questions. "You have a strong case for fraud and theft," she concluded. "But litigation could be lengthy and expensive, with no guarantee that you'd recover all your assets before he burns through them." "I understand," I said. "That's why I want to explore a different angle first. The tax issue." Amara's eyebrow raised. "Go on." "My brother isn't just stealing my business. Based on the financial discrepancies my accountant noticed, he's likely hiding income from the IRS. If we can prove that, it gives us leverage." A slow smile spread across Amara's face. "The Al Capone approach. He evaded murder charges but went down for tax evasion." "Exactly," I said, shifting Emma gently as she stirred. "I don't want a prolonged family drama in civil court. I want my business back quickly, with minimal damage to its reputation and operations." Quote, "It's an interesting strategy," Amara admitted. "We'd need solid proof of tax fraud and we'd need to move carefully. The IRS doesn't appreciate being used as a weapon in personal disputes, but they do take tax evasion very seriously." I'm not using them as a weapon, I clarified. I'm reporting a genuine concern about illegal activity. The fact that it helps me recover my stolen business is just alignment of interests. Amara nodded approvingly. Let's get started then. I'll need everything your accountant has, plus any communications from your brother about the business finances. For the next week, while Marcus operated under the delusion that he'd gotten away with his scheme, my team and I built our case meticulously. Jade and the others gathered evidence of cash transactions that never made it into the official books. Deepak compiled financial discrepancies showing clear patterns of underreported income. Amara prepared formal complaints to multiple authorities. Throughout it all, Emma was my constant companion. At meetings, during late-night strategy sessions, even during the tearful moments when the weight of my brother's betrayal threatened to crush me. Her presence wasn't a hindrance as Marcus had implied it would be. It was a reminder of exactly why I couldn't give up. 8 days after discovering the theft, I was ready to confront Marcus again, this time with an arsenal of evidence and the law on my side. I arranged to meet him at a coffee shop near his new headquarters, which he'd financed with my stolen funds. He arrived looking smug and well-rested, dressed in an expensive new suit. The physical resemblance between us, the same dark curls and amber eyes we'd inherited from our mother, made his betrayal seem even more surreal, like watching an alternate version of myself who'd chosen a darker path. "I'm surprised you wanted to meet," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Come to beg for a job in your old company?" I placed a sealed envelope on the table between us. "Actually, I came to give you a chance to fix this before it gets worse." His expression flickered with momentary uncertainty before the arrogance returned. "There's nothing to fix. The business transition is complete. Your customers barely noticed the change." "I'm not talking about the business transition. I'm talking about the $223,000 in unreported income over the past 3 months. I'm talking about the cash sales that never made it into the official books. I'm talking about tax fraud, Marcus." The blood drained from his face so quickly I thought he might faint. "I don't know what you're talking about." Open the envelope. Inside was a fraction of what we'd gathered, just enough to prove I wasn't bluffing. Bank statements showing the discrepancies. Screenshots of the shadow accounting system he'd created. Statements from employees about cash transactions they'd witnessed. "This is nothing," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Just some bookkeeping errors I've been meaning to fix." "The IRS won't see it that way," I replied calmly. "Neither will the state tax authority. Or the police, for that matter." Marcus's composure cracked. "You wouldn't. I'm your brother. A brother who stole nearly everything from me and dismissed my ability to be both a mother and a business owner." I leaned forward. "Here's what happens next. You transfer everything back. The business registration, the accounts, the inventory, everything, and I don't submit these findings to the authorities." "And if I refuse?" His tone was challenging, but I could see the fear behind his eyes. "Then by this time tomorrow you'll be explaining to federal agents why you thought you could commit tax fraud and get away with it. Your choice." The next 10 minutes were a masterclass in wounded ego and deflection. Marcus claimed he'd been planning to surprise me with an improved business. He insisted he was just trying to help me focus on motherhood without stress. He suggested we become real partners, with him handling the business side permanently. I remained unmoved. The accounts and legal ownership transfer back to me by the end of the day, or the evidence goes to the IRS. It's that simple. In the end, faced with the prospect of potential criminal charges, Marcus capitulated. By sunset, the business accounts had been restored to my control, though significantly depleted from his week-long spending spree. The legal paperwork reversing his fraudulent company registration was filed the following day. The victory was bittersweet. I'd recovered my business but lost my brother. Not that the person he'd revealed himself to be was someone I wanted in my life anyway. Our parents tried to mediate a reconciliation, but some betrayals cut too deep for simple forgiveness. 2 months later, Celestial Designs was back on track. I'd implemented new security protocols and financial safeguards, restructured the company with Jade as my official second-in-command, and created a more flexible work environment that allowed me to bring Emma with me when needed. The irony wasn't lost on me that in trying to force me to choose between motherhood and entrepreneurship, Marcus had actually pushed me to create a more integrated, sustainable approach to both. I now had a nursery corner in my office and adjusted my design schedule around Emma's naps. I delegated more effectively and trusted my team with greater responsibility. Most importantly, I'd learned to trust my instincts. The warning signs about Marcus had been there all along. I'd just chosen to ignore them in the name of family loyalty and second chances. Never again would I override my intuition about someone's character, regardless of shared DNA. The aftermath of my confrontation with Marcus revealed the true extent of his betrayal. Not only had he drained the business accounts, but he'd also damaged relationships with key suppliers by demanding aggressive payment terms and attempting to renegotiate established contracts. 3 weeks after regaining control of Celestial Designs, I sat at my workbench in the warehouse, meticulously setting stones for a custom order, while Emma slept in her portable crib nearby. My phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, but instinct perhaps, made me answer. "Is this Eliza Wilson?" The voice was professional, clipped. "Speaking. This is Agent Rivera with the Internal Revenue Service. We've received some concerning information about your business, Celestial Designs. I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss these matters." My heart dropped. Despite Marcus returning control of the business, the damage he'd done had caught the attention of the authorities anyway. I glanced at Emma, peaceful in her sleep, and took a deep breath. "Of course," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "I'm happy to cooperate fully." 2 days later, I sat across from Agent Rivera in a sterile government office, Emma contentedly playing with a teething toy in her carrier beside me. I'd brought Deepak, my accountant, and Amara, my lawyer, both of whom had advised against bringing my infant daughter to an IRS meeting. But I refused to separate myself from Emma or perpetuate the myth that motherhood and professional responsibilities couldn't coexist. "Ms. Wilson," Agent Rivera began, opening a thick file folder. "We've identified significant discrepancies in your business's reported income for the last quarter. According to our analysis, approximately $223,000 in revenue was never properly documented or reported." I nodded. "I'm aware of these discrepancies, and I've brought complete documentation explaining them." I slid across the table the file we'd prepared, the same evidence I'd used to confront Marcus, plus additional documentation showing the timeline of the fraud and my immediate actions upon discovering it. For 3 months, while I was on maternity leave, my brother Marcus Wilson was given temporary management authority over Celestial Designs. During this time, he committed fraud by diverting funds, underreporting income, and ultimately attempting to steal the entire business. As soon as I discovered his actions, I took immediate steps to regain control and rectify all financial improprieties. Agent Rivera's expression remained neutral as she examined our documentation. "And you have proof that these actions were taken without your knowledge or consent?" Deepak intervened, presenting bank records, email communications, and witness statements from employees. Ms. Wilson maintained ownership and overall authority, but Mr. Wilson abused his temporary management position to commit these acts without her knowledge. For nearly 2 hours, we walked Agent Rivera through the entire situation. By the end, her demeanor had softened slightly. "Based on the evidence you've provided, it appears you were a victim of fraud rather than a participant," she acknowledged. "However, as the business owner, you still bear responsibility for ensuring all income is properly reported and all taxes paid." "I understand completely," I said. "I've already initiated amended filings for the affected period and set aside funds to cover any additional taxes, interest, or penalties that may be due." Agent Rivera seemed momentarily surprised by my straightforward acceptance of responsibility. "Most people in your situation would be looking for ways to avoid paying anything," she noted. "I'm not most people," I replied simply. "I built this business from nothing, with integrity as its foundation. I won't let my brother's actions compromise that, even if it means taking a financial hit to make things right." As we prepared to leave, Agent Rivera paused. "One more thing, Ms. Wilson. We'll need to interview your brother as part of our investigation. This may lead to criminal charges against him. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Marcus. My childhood playmate. My parents' golden child. The brother I'd trusted despite all evidence suggesting I shouldn't. The pain of his betrayal was still raw, but I felt no satisfaction at the prospect of his legal troubles. I didn't report him to the IRS, I clarified. I only used the evidence of tax fraud to pressure him into returning my business. Whatever happens now is the consequence of his actions, not my vengeance. Agent Rivera nodded. Nevertheless, our investigation will proceed. Your cooperation has been noted and will be taken into consideration regarding your business's liability. As Amara, Deepak and I left the federal building, a weight lifted from my shoulders. The meeting had gone as well as could be expected, and for the first time since discovering Marcus's betrayal, I felt like I could see a clear path forward. You handled that beautifully, Amara commented as we walked to our cars. Most clients panic or get defensive during IRS interviews. I adjusted Emma in her carrier. Panic wouldn't solve anything. Besides, I have nothing to hide. The amended tax returns and penalties will cost you around $50,000, Deepak warned. That's a significant hit for a business still recovering from fraud. Then that's what we'll pay, I said firmly. Celestial Designs will start fresh, completely clean. Back at the warehouse, I called an all-hands meeting with my small team. They deserve to know what we were facing. The good news is we've legally recovered the business, I told them, Emma balanced on my hip. The challenging news is that we're facing some financial hurdles. Marcus's fraud has left us with tax liabilities and depleted accounts. I expected concern, perhaps even some employees considering jumping ship. Instead, Jade stepped forward. We've been talking, she said, gesturing to the others. We all have some savings, and we're willing to invest in the company. Make us partners, even minor ones, and we'll help rebuild. Tears sprang to my eyes at this unexpected show of loyalty. These people, who had no obligation beyond their paychecks, were offering their personal resources to save the business they'd helped build. That's incredibly generous, I managed, but I can't take your savings. It's not charity, Rico, my shipping manager, insisted. It's an investment. We believe in Celestial Designs, in you, and we want a stake in its future. That night, after putting Emma to bed, I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad, calculating what it would take to stabilize the business. Between the tax penalties, the money Marcus had spent during his week of control, and the ongoing operational costs, we needed approximately $200,000 to get back on solid ground. My team's combined offer would cover less than half that amount. I could sell my car and tap into my emergency fund, but that would still leave us short. Taking out a high-interest loan would only create a different kind of vulnerability. As I stared at the numbers, my phone rang. My mother's name flashed on the screen. How did the IRS meeting go? She asked without preamble. I gave her the condensed version, emphasizing that while the business would survive, the financial consequences were significant. Your father and I want to help, she said after a long pause. We have some money set aside. Mom, no, I interrupted. You've already helped Marcus out of countless financial disasters. I won't let you bail me out of the situation he created. This isn't like those times, she insisted. We enabled Marcus's irresponsibility for years. In many ways, we created the person who felt entitled to take what wasn't his. Helping you recover from his actions is the least we can do. I appreciate the offer, but this is my business, my responsibility. Eliza Wilson, my mother said, using my full name as she had when I was a stubborn child. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is accept help when it's offered. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. Her words hit home. Wasn't I considering accepting investments from my employees? Why was I so resistant to help from my parents? Let me think about it, I conceded. The next morning, I woke with clarity. My mother was right. Strength wasn't about handling everything alone. It was about building a network of support and knowing when to lean on it. But I needed that support to be structured in a way that maintained the integrity of what I was building. I spent the day developing a business plan for a reimagined Celestial Designs. Instead of remaining a sole proprietorship vulnerable to the kind of takeover Marcus had attempted, I would restructure as a limited liability company with clear ownership stakes and protections. I would retain majority ownership, but my loyal employees would become minority partners with profit-sharing rights. My parents could provide a loan convertible to a small equity stake if they chose. Most importantly, I would implement governance structures that would make it impossible for anyone to ever again seize control the way Marcus had. That evening, I presented my plan to the team. Their enthusiasm was immediate and unanimous. "This is even better than what we proposed," Jade said, examining the detailed profit-sharing model I'd created. "We're not just saving the business, we're making it stronger." Rico pointed to the production expansion outlined in my plan. "With this structure, we could double our output within a year. And the new security protocols are bulletproof," added May, our web manager. "No single person, not even you, Eliza, could authorize major financial moves without secondary verification." With the team's endorsement secured, I called my parents and invited them over for dinner. As they played with Emma on the living room floor, I presented them with the same business plan. "This isn't a handout," I explained. "It's a structured investment opportunity with clear terms and potential returns. You'd be helping not just me, but the entire team who stood by me through this crisis." My father, always the more financially cautious of my parents, studied the numbers carefully. "This is thorough, Eliza. Better than most business plans I reviewed during my banking career." "We'll do it," my mother said, not waiting for my father's full analysis, "but on one condition." I tensed. "What's that?" "You need to talk to Marcus one more time." My immediate reaction was refusal. He made his choices. There's nothing left to say. "Not for his sake," my mother clarified. "For yours. And for Emma's. Carrying this level of unresolved betrayal isn't healthy for either of you." I looked at my daughter, contentedly chewing on a toy in her grandfather's lap. What kind of example did I want to set for her about handling betrayal, about family, about closure? "I'll consider it," I said, which both my parents recognized as the closest thing to agreement they'd get for now. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The business restructuring proceeded smoothly, with my employees officially becoming partners and my parents providing the loan we needed to stabilize operations. The IRS investigation continued, but with Amara's guidance, we cooperated fully and negotiated a reasonable settlement for the tax issues. Celestial Designs began to recover. Orders increased, especially after a popular fashion influencer wore one of our necklaces in a viral video. The warehouse hummed with productive energy, and for the first time since discovering Marcus's betrayal, I felt genuine optimism about the future. Then came the call I'd been half expecting, half dreading. Marcus, requesting to meet. We arranged to meet at a public park, neutral ground, where the open space and presence of others would keep emotions from escalating. I arrived early, settling on a bench with Emma in her stroller beside me. The autumn air was crisp, leaves crunching under the feet of joggers and dog walkers enjoying the afternoon sunshine. I spotted Marcus before he saw me, shoulders hunched, hands buried in his jacket pockets, looking significantly less polished than during our last encounter. When his eyes met mine, I was surprised by the flash of shame that crossed his face before he composed himself. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, remaining standing even after I gestured to the space beside me on the bench. "I didn't think you would." "Mom and Dad thought it was important," I replied honestly. "For closure." He nodded, finally sitting down but maintaining distance between us. "The IRS has been interviewing me. Multiple times." "I know." "You didn't tell them about the tax issues," he said, more statement than question. "No, I didn't. But they found the discrepancies anyway." I kept my voice neutral. "Actions have consequences, Marcus." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar from our childhood that it momentarily transported me back to simpler times. Him confessing to breaking Mom's favorite vase, me helping cover for him despite knowing better. "I'm probably going to face charges," he admitted. "Tax fraud, possibly wire fraud for the transfers." I said nothing. There was nothing to say. "I wanted to tell you I'm sorry," he continued when I didn't respond. "Not because I got caught, but because I've had time to really see what I did. It was unforgivable. Why? The question escaped before I could contain it. Why did you do it? Was it just about the money? Marcus stared at his hands. It wasn't just the money. It was seeing you succeed at everything. The business, motherhood, all of it. Making it look easy when I couldn't even hold down a job. He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. I told myself I deserved it more than you did, that I would do more with it, that you'd be better off focusing on being a mom anyway. None of that justified stealing from me, I said quietly, from your own sister. I know that now. He glanced at Emma, who was watching him curiously from her stroller. For what it's worth, which isn't much, I've been getting help. Therapy. Turns out I've got some pretty deep issues with entitlement and self-worth. I couldn't help the short, humorless laugh that escaped me. You think? He winced but nodded. I deserve that. I deserve all of it. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Eliza. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, and I'm trying to be better. We sat in silence for several minutes, watching a pair of squirrels chase each other up a nearby oak tree. The anger I'd carried for weeks had transformed into something else. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of acceptance. What will you do? I finally asked. After, whatever happens with the legal issues. Start over somewhere, properly this time. No shortcuts, no stealing, no expecting success without earning it. He hesitated. I've been offered a position teaching business ethics at a community college in Arizona, ironically enough. Contingent on how the legal issues resolve, of course. The absurdity of it, my ethically challenged brother teaching business ethics, struck us both at the same moment, and unexpected laughter bubbled up. Not joyful laughter, but the kind that acknowledges life's strange twists. You'd actually be good at that, I admitted. Nobody knows the pitfalls better than someone who's fallen into them all. As our meeting drew to a close, Marcus stood awkwardly, hands back in his pockets. I don't expect us to ever be close again, but I hope someday Emma might know she has an uncle who made terrible mistakes but found his way back to being a decent person. I couldn't make that promise yet. The wound was still too fresh, the trust too thoroughly shattered, but I recognized the importance of the moment. Not just for Marcus or for me, but for the legacy of resilience and forgiveness I wanted to create for my daughter. One step at a time, I said finally. Prove yourself first. Not to me, but to yourself. Then we'll see. It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation, but it was an acknowledgement that people can change, that redemption might be possible even after profound betrayal. As I watched him walk away, I felt a knot of tension I'd been carrying for months begin to loosen. The following Monday, I arrived at the warehouse with Emma to find my team gathered around Jade's computer, expressions ranging from shock to excitement. What's going on? I asked, setting down Emma's carrier. We've been approached by Nordstrom, Jade announced, turning the screen toward me. They want to feature Celestial designs in their spring collection. All stores, nationwide. The email detailed terms that would triple our production and exposure overnight. It was the kind of opportunity I'd dreamed of when starting the business at my kitchen table, the kind that would cement Celestial Designs as a legitimate player in the jewelry industry rather than a successful boutique operation. This is huge, I managed, scanning the proposal details. How did they find us? Apparently, that influencer who wore our Celestial pendant last month is dating a Nordstrom buyer, Rico explained. She showed him her collection, and he reached out to their merchandising team. The synchronicity of it all wasn't lost on me. Just as one chapter of crisis was closing, Marcus, the IRS investigation, the financial recovery, a new chapter of opportunity was opening. Can we handle this scale of production? I asked, immediately thinking through the logistics. We'd need more space, more artisans, more everything. Already working on it, May said, pulling up a spreadsheet. I've identified 3 potential expanded warehouse spaces. And we've got a list of qualified artisans from that jewelry design program at the community college. I looked around at these people who had become more than employees, more than partners. They had become family in the truest sense of the word. They had stood by me when my actual family had failed me, had believed in my vision when it seemed impossible, had invested their futures in mine. Let's do this, I decided. But we do it right. Sustainable growth, maintaining quality, and, most importantly, preserving the culture we've built together. That night, as I rocked Emma to sleep in the nursery we'd created in the corner of my home studio, I reflected on the journey of the past few months. From the devastating betrayal that had nearly destroyed everything I'd built to this moment of unprecedented opportunity, the path had been anything but straightforward. Yet through it all, I'd discovered strengths I never knew I possessed. Not just business acumen or creative talent, but resilience in the face of betrayal, the wisdom to accept help when needed, and the courage to rebuild on a stronger foundation. Marcus had tried to force me to choose between being a mother and being an entrepreneur. Instead, I'd found a way to be both, integrating these parts of my identity rather than compartmentalizing them. Emma wasn't an impediment to my success. She was the inspiration for creating a business with values worth passing down. As she drifted off to sleep, her tiny hand wrapped around my finger, I made a silent promise. To her, to myself, to the community we were building. This legacy we were creating together would be defined not by what had been taken from us, but by what we chose to build in its place. 6 months after the Nordstrom deal, I stood in our new production facility, a renovated warehouse 3 times the size of our original space, watching artisans craft pieces for our upcoming summer collection. The rhythmic sounds of metalwork created a soothing backdrop as I bounced Emma on my hip, now an active toddler more interested in exploring than being held. The Seattle order is packed and ready to ship, Jade announced, approaching with a tablet displaying our production schedule. And the custom pieces for that celebrity wedding are ahead of schedule. Perfect, I replied, setting Emma down in her designated play area, where she immediately began stacking colorful wooden blocks. Toys I'd commissioned from a local craftsman to keep her entertained during work hours. Any word from the gemstone supplier in Thailand? Their shipment cleared customs this morning. We'll have the sapphires by Thursday. I nodded, mentally adjusting our production timeline. The expansion had brought challenges, but we'd navigated them with the collaborative spirit that had become Celestial Design's hallmark. Every partner, from my original team to the new artisans we'd hired, had ownership in our success, both figuratively and literally through our profit-sharing structure. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. CNN business segment about your company just aired. You were wonderful. I smiled, remembering the interview I'd given last week. The business reporter had been particularly interested in our unique ownership model and my approach to integrating motherhood with entrepreneurship. Celestial Designs isn't just creating jewelry, she'd said during our conversation. You're creating a new paradigm for family-friendly business. While I was proud of the recognition, what satisfied me most was seeing my vision materialize. A creative space where people could do their best work while honoring their whole lives, where single parents could bring children to work when childcare fell through, where medical appointments didn't require elaborate excuses, where personal emergencies were met with support rather than suspicion. Eliza? May's voice pulled me from my thoughts. The IRS just sent the final clearance letter. We're officially in the clear. The news was the final period at the end of a difficult chapter. The investigation into Marcus's financial improprieties had concluded with him accepting responsibility through a plea agreement, 6 months of house arrest, significant fines, and 5 years of probation. The relatively lenient sentence had come after he'd made full restitution and demonstrated genuine remorse. That's good to hear, I said, feeling a complex mix of relief and lingering sadness. While Marcus and I had established a fragile line of communication, our relationship remained fundamentally altered. Some trust, once broken, can never be fully restored, only acknowledged and carefully navigated. As promised, he'd moved to Arizona and was teaching at a community college, using his own story as a cautionary tale for business students. Monthly video calls allowed him to maintain a distant uncle relationship with Emma, though always under my watchful eye. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a path forward that allowed for healing without forgetting. Conference call with the New York team in 15 minutes. Rico reminded me, tapping his watch. Want me to set up in the main conference room? Let's use my office, I decided. Emma just got settled with her blocks. The transformation of my workspace reflected the evolution of my leadership philosophy. My glass-walled office featured a comfortable play corner with child-proof barriers, allowing me to keep Emma nearby while maintaining professional boundaries when needed. It wasn't always perfect. There had been memorable interruptions during important calls, but it worked, demonstrating daily that parenting and professionalism weren't mutually exclusive. As I settled at my desk for the call, I glanced at the framed artifacts on my wall. The first necklace I'd ever sold, now displayed alongside the purchase order from Nordstrom for 5,000 pieces. My original business plan, written on notebook paper, juxtaposed with our current strategic roadmap that projected 8-figure revenue within 2 years. Most prominently displayed was a candid photo taken during our company-wide retreat 3 months ago. 27 people, including 4 children and a dog, gathered on a beach at sunset. Not just colleagues, but a community, bound together by shared purpose and mutual respect. The conference call connected, bringing the faces of our New York team onto my screen. 4 talented designers we'd hired to create an East Coast presence for Celestial Designs. Good morning from Charleston, I greeted them. Let's talk about the fall collection. As we discussed design concepts and materials sourcing, I noticed Emma stacking her blocks higher than ever before, her little face scrunched in concentration. A metaphor wasn't lost on me. Building something stable required solid foundations, careful balance, and persistence through inevitable tumbles. After the call ended, my personal phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Typically, I'd let unknown calls go to voicemail during work hours, but something prompted me to answer. Is this Eliza Wilson? A woman's voice asked. Speaking. This is Catherine Reeves, from Women's Business Quarterly. We're doing a feature on companies creating innovative workplace policies for parents, and your name keeps coming up. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus's attempt to force me to choose between motherhood and business had ultimately led to a model that rejected that false dichotomy entirely, a model now gaining national attention. I'd be happy to discuss our approach, I told Catherine, though I should mention that what we're doing isn't revolutionary. It's simply humane. That's exactly why we want to feature you, she replied. You're demonstrating that profitability and compassionate workplace policies aren't mutually exclusive. We scheduled an interview for the following week, and as I ended the call, Jade appeared at my office door with an expression I couldn't immediately interpret. Everything okay? I asked. More than okay, she replied, stepping inside and closing the door. Remember that confidential project I've been working on with the design team? It's ready to show you. For the past 2 months, Jade had been leading a special initiative, requesting extra resources and time but keeping the details private with my blessing. Trust had become the cornerstone of our partnership, a trust earned through the crucible of crisis and strengthened through our subsequent rebuilding. She placed a velvet pouch on my desk. Open it. Inside was a pendant unlike anything in our current collections. A stunning celestial design featuring a mother-daughter motif in our signature mixed metals, but with an innovative mechanical element that allowed the pieces to separate into 2 distinct necklaces. It's beautiful, I breathed, turning it in my hands to catch the light. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. It's the first piece in the Legacy collection, Jade explained, unable to contain her excitement. We've designed 12 pieces, each representing different family bonds that can be worn together or separately. The marketing concept is connected even when apart. The symbolism resonated deeply. My journey had taught me that true strength comes not from independence but from interconnection, from building relationships that support growth rather than restrict it. There's more, Jade continued. We want to establish a foundation alongside the collection launch. For every legacy piece sold, we'll fund a grant for a parent entrepreneur needing support to launch or expand their business. Tears pricked my eyes as I recognized the perfect synthesis of our company values in this proposal. It wasn't just about making beautiful jewelry or even building a successful business. It was about creating ripples of opportunity that extended far beyond our immediate circle. "When can we launch?" I asked, already envisioning the impact. "We've prepared everything. With your approval, we could announce next month to coincide with the Women's Business Quarterly feature." I nodded, emotion making speech difficult for a moment. Emma, sensing the shift in energy, toddled over and reached for the pendant, her small fingers tracing the intertwined shapes with innate curiosity. "What do you think, little one?" I asked her. "Should we help other mommies build their dreams too?" She responded with a serious nod that made both Jade and me laugh, though the meaning behind the moment remained profound. Later that evening, as I prepared dinner in my recently renovated kitchen, a luxury I'd finally allowed myself as the business stabilized, my thoughts drifted to the journey of the past year. From the devastating moment of discovery, when I'd watched my accounts being drained to this point of unprecedented success and purpose, the path had been neither straight nor easy, yet every challenge had ultimately strengthened both me and the business I'd built. Marcus's betrayal, painful as it was, had forced me to address vulnerabilities in my business structure and create more robust systems. The financial crisis had led to a partnership model that gave everyone a stake in our collective success. The struggle to balance motherhood and leadership had inspired workplace policies that were attracting top talent and national recognition. The doorbell interrupted my reflections. Opening it revealed my parents, arriving for our weekly family dinner, a tradition we'd established during the rebuilding phase and maintained even as our lives grew busier. "Something smells amazing," my father commented, hanging his jacket on the hook that had become his in my entryway. "Moroccan tagine," I replied, accepting his hug. "That cookbook you gave me for my birthday has been life-changing." My mother moved directly to Emma's high chair, where my daughter greeted her with squeals of delight and grabby hands. "There's my sweet girl. Did you help Mommy cook?" "Help is a generous term," I laughed. She contributed by rearranging all my measuring cups on the floor. As we settled around the table, the conversation flowed easily, from business developments to community news to Emma's latest milestones. The painful subject of Marcus arose briefly when my father mentioned receiving an email from him about his teaching position becoming permanent. "He seems to be finding his way," my father said carefully, aware of the still tender nature of the wound between his children. "I hope he is," I replied sincerely. The anger that had once burned so fiercely had gradually transformed into something more complex, a mixture of caution, sadness for what was lost, and tentative hope for what might still be salvaged over time. "He asked about Emma," my mother added, "and about the business. He saw the piece in Charleston Business Monthly. I'll send him an update," I promised, surprising myself with how much I meant it. While trust remained broken, complete estrangement served no one, not me, not Marcus, and certainly not Emma, who deserved to know her family history in all its complicated reality when she was old enough to understand. After dinner, as my parents played with Emma in the living room, I slipped away to my home office to check on a few final details for tomorrow's production schedule. On my desk sat the prototype of the legacy pendant, catching the evening light from my window. I picked it up, feeling its weight and significance in my palm. What had begun as a simple creative outlet during a difficult period in my life had evolved into something far greater than I could have imagined. Not just a successful business, but a platform for change, a community of like-minded creators, a model for how work and family could coexist harmoniously. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been betrayal, heartbreak, financial strain, and countless moments of doubt. There had been nights spent working while Emma slept beside me, mornings when exhaustion made even the simplest tasks challenging, and days when balancing it all seemed impossible. Yet here we were, thriving, growing, creating ripples that extended far beyond jewelry or profit margins. The challenges hadn't broken us. They had refined us, like metal in a crucible, revealing strength and possibility where once there had been only raw potential. As I returned to the living room, watching my daughter laugh as she played with her grandparents, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Marcus had tried to force an impossible choice between motherhood and entrepreneurship. Instead, I'd discovered there was no choice to make. Only integration, adaptation, and the courage to rewrite the rules. The following morning, I arrived at the warehouse earlier than usual, Emma chattering happily in her car seat about the birds and trees we passed. The early summer sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as I gathered her and my bag, nodding to the security guard who had become accustomed to our early arrivals. Inside, the space was quiet. Production wouldn't begin for another hour. I settled Emma in my office with breakfast and her favorite books, then took a moment to walk the production floor alone, something I did whenever big decisions loomed. Today's decision was significant. Whether to accept an acquisition offer from a major luxury conglomerate. The terms were generous, the autonomy promises extensive, and the potential for global expansion unprecedented. 6 months ago, I might have jumped at the opportunity. Now, I wasn't so sure. As I walked past workstations where artisans would soon be crafting our designs, I reflected on what we'd built. Not just beautiful jewelry, but a business model that prioritized people alongside profit. A workplace where parents could bring children when needed. A profit-sharing structure that gave everyone a stake in our success. A foundation about to launch that would support other parent entrepreneurs. Would those values survive corporate acquisition, regardless of promises made? Or would the pressure of quarterly earnings reports gradually erode the human-centered approach that had become our hallmark? By the time my team began arriving, I'd reached my decision. We would decline the acquisition offer and instead pursue strategic partnerships that allowed us to grow while maintaining our independence and values. When I shared the decision during our morning leadership meeting, the relief on my partners' faces confirmed I'd made the right choice. I was afraid to say anything, Jade admitted. The money would have been life-changing for all of us. Money changes circumstances, I replied. But meaning changes lives. What we're building here matters beyond the bottom line. The day unfolded with renewed energy as we finalized plans for the Legacy Collection launch. The marketing team presented concepts that beautifully captured our vision of connected strength. The production team demonstrated how they'd streamlined creation of the complex pieces without sacrificing quality. The foundation committee outlined their process for selecting grant recipients. Late afternoon found me in a video interview with Women's Business Quarterly, Emma occasionally visible in the background as she played in her office corner. What would you say to other entrepreneurs, particularly mothers, facing seemingly impossible challenges? The interviewer asked as we neared the end of our conversation. I considered the question carefully, thinking of the darkest moments of the past year, the betrayal, the financial crisis, the days when balancing business and motherhood had seemed utterly impossible. I'd tell them that our greatest challenges often contain the seeds of our most meaningful innovations, I said finally. When my brother betrayed me and tried to steal my business, he believed he was forcing me to choose between being a mother and being an entrepreneur. Instead, he inadvertently pushed me to reimagine what both could look like. And what do they look like for you now? She prompted. They look like integration rather than separation, like a child's play area in a CEO's office, like production schedules that accommodate school pickups, like a business that measures success not just in profit but in human flourishing. After the interview ended, I gathered Emma for our walk around the production floor, a daily ritual that had become beloved by both of us and the team. She waved enthusiastically to the artisans, who responded with smiles and occasional high fives as we made our rounds. At Jade's workstation, she was completing the first production piece from the Legacy Collection, a mother-daughter pendant like the prototype, but with small customizations for the specific client who had pre-ordered it. For Congresswoman Alvarez, Jade explained, a gift for her daughter's college graduation. I smiled, imagining the pendant being passed between mother and daughter, a physical representation of a bond that remained strong even when circumstances created distance. It's perfect, I told her, meaning far more than just the craftsmanship. That evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, she asked for the story she'd come to request most often, the tale of how Mommy built her sparkly business, and how it grew even stronger after the mean uncle tried to take it away. I'd crafted a toddler-appropriate version that emphasized resilience and community without demonizing her actual uncle, whom she still occasionally saw on video calls. And then what happened? She prompted at the familiar point in the story. And then Mommy realized that sometimes when things break, we can build them back better than before, I continued, smoothing her curls. She invited her friends to become partners in the business, and together they created something stronger and more beautiful than any of them could have made alone. And did they all live happily ever after? She asked sleepily, following the story's rhythm. They worked hard and built something meaningful together. I corrected gently, which is even better than a fairy tale ending. As Emma drifted to sleep, I reflected on the truth of those words. The past 18 months had taught me that there are no simple happily ever afters in real life. Only complex journeys filled with unexpected challenges and opportunities for growth. Marcus's betrayal had nearly destroyed everything I'd built, but in the crucible of that crisis, something stronger had been forged. A business model that rejected false dichotomies between parenthood and professional success. A leadership approach that valued collaboration over control. And a personal resilience I hadn't known I possessed. The IRS investigation that had initially seemed like another devastating blow had ultimately provided the leverage needed to reclaim what was rightfully mine, and created the accountability that set Marcus on a path toward redemption, not for my sake, but for his own. The financial strain of rebuilding had forced innovative thinking that led to our current partnership structure, a model now being studied and emulated by other companies seeking to create more equitable workplaces. Even the daily challenges of balancing motherhood with leadership had inspired workplace policies that were attracting national attention and positioned Celestial Designs as a pioneer in family-friendly business practices. None of it had been easy. There had been tears, sleepless nights, moments of paralyzing doubt, and days when surrender seemed the only rational option. Yet each obstacle had ultimately revealed new possibilities, each setback had contained the seeds of future innovation, and each broken piece had been incorporated into a stronger whole. As I moved through my quiet house, preparing for the next day, I paused at my desk where a small framed photo caught my attention. Emma as a newborn, sleeping peacefully in a bassinet beside my workbench. It had been taken during those early days when I was trying to maintain the business while adjusting to motherhood, before Marcus's involvement, before the betrayal, before everything changed. In that moment, I'd been terrified, uncertain how to balance these two profound parts of my identity, unsure if it was even possible. Now, looking back from the perspective of hard-won wisdom, I saw that the question had never been whether I could be both mother and entrepreneur. The real question had been how to integrate these aspects of myself in a way that honored both without sacrificing either. The answer hadn't come easily or all at once. It had emerged gradually through crisis and recovery, through trial and error, through the support of a community that believed in possibility rather than limitation. It continued to evolve daily, as Emma grew, as the business expanded, as new challenges arose. But the fundamental truth remained constant. We are not diminished by embracing the fullness of our lives and identities. We are enlarged by it, enriched by the very complexities that others might see as liabilities. My brother had tried to use my motherhood as a weapon against my professional ambitions. Instead, it had become the catalyst for creating something more meaningful than I could have built otherwise, a business that recognized the humanity of everyone involved, that created space for whole lives rather than compartmentalized roles, that measured success in flourishing rather than mere profit. As I finally prepared for sleep, my phone chimed with an email notification. Opening it revealed a message from a young mother in Seattle who had attended our recent trunk show at Nordstrom. Attached was a photo of her wearing one of our celestial pendants while holding her infant daughter. "I just wanted to thank you," she'd written. "Not just for the beautiful necklace, but for showing that it's possible to build something meaningful without sacrificing what matters most. You've inspired me to launch the small business I've been dreaming about for years. If you could do it, maybe I can too." I smiled, composing a brief but heartfelt reply of encouragement before setting my phone aside. This was the true measure of success. Not the revenue numbers or magazine features or acquisition offers, but the ripples of possibility created when we refused to accept artificial limitations. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new balancing acts between motherhood and leadership. But tonight, I rested in the knowledge that whatever came next, we had built something that mattered. A business, yes, but also a model of what was possible when we have the courage to rewrite the rules. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.